Hello and welcome to another CherrySTEM. Today we have a bit of a different approach. It will be just me today. I am lacking my lovely co-host Richard Rawl, but do not let that fool you. We'll have a good old time anyway. Now, this podcast is brought to you by listeners, viewers, and supporters such as yourself, perhaps. Are you one? You can find out by going to patreon.com/AnnaCherry, and I would highly recommend picking the Challenger tier. It will allow you to participate in after shows and other discussions with us, as well as get access to secret Discord rooms, as well as generally shield your innocent eyes away from most lewdness as we keep all of that fun stuff beyond the hardcore tier and higher. But at Challenger mode, you can still help support the podcast and get special access to other things that we do in our Discord and otherwise. So if you can, support at patreon.com/AnnaCherry. Regardless, we will continue bringing you these shows no matter what our patronage level stays at, but you can help us grow all the way to a legit podcast on Spotify and the like. And I think that would be a whole lot of fun to achieve. So come and join us on Patreon. It's a really good time. All right, now, hopefully today we will get to talk about some of the special after show articles that I've been saving up and some of the things that we go over in today's first edition of the Futurist CherrySTEM will be a little bit dealing with science fiction, as well as other things that used to be called or thought of as science fiction, such as AI and robots and the indistinguishable line between human and machine, as a lot of our science fiction sci-fi movies and books have been predicting or warning, if you will. And we also got a first look at Japan's probe of the asteroid. So that's a bit of recent news, but also some of the stuff that is science fiction worthy. And in fact, it is a first of its kind that Japan was able to pull off. So that's, sort of along our theme of science fiction, and in ways in which the science fiction has perhaps become reality, as well as some other things that we may not need to necessarily worry about just yet, such as AI takeover of our jobs or other positions in life. As well as a little bit of a hats off to some of my science fiction authors, as well as other favorites like Isaac Asimov, Philip K. Dick, Roddenberry, of course, Bradbury, all the greats. So we will touch upon a variety of these topics and then have a special discussion with patrons that will be available as a Patreon perk as well once it gets recorded. So you have time to join us before the end of the show, where we begin. Words! Words escaped me at a sound that erupted. All right. Apparently, there were alerts set for activities, and I have not been aware of it. My bad. I was not expecting all of these exciting sounds. So yes, words failed me for a moment, but I do appreciate that. Appreciate the follows, and we will see all of you patrons in the after show. Let me turn down my speakers so I do not have a heart attack again, and we'll have a good time in a discussion of science fiction and reality and a variety of other things. So it'll be good, and it shall be recorded and available for patrons as well, beginning from Challenger mode. So all the awesome things, all the cool nerdy kids are hanging out in our Discord and Patreon. So definitely check that out. If you cannot support us without hardship, you can still follow on Patreon. It is a good place to get all of the updates, such as the CherrySTEMs in audio format that I upload to Patreon, public posts. You don't need to go beyond the paywall to get those, and we have all 30 plus episodes available there. And one of these days, I will also begin uploading it to the official site. So until then, definitely check out the Patreon buttons, as well as supporting the stream directly. But yes, no more distractions of the shilling variety. Proving that I apparently can't handle getting alert notifications and being able to carry an introduction. So that's good to know. But all right, might actually tweak the alerts and create some custom emojis now that Twitter was evil. Not Twitter, the other one, Twitch. Too many TWs, man. Now that Twitch completely banned me, maybe even for life, I don't know. I don't want to risk it by even showing up in friends' streams. But since Twitch has been a butthole, we've been doing YouTube, of course, as you all know. They've been following us recently. And the glaring difference between Twitch and YouTube is the lack of subscriber emotes and fun things like that. So maybe one day we'll look into that. But for now, I plan on making all of these CherrySTEMs free to the public. And big thanks once again to patrons who allow all this to happen. And hopefully, one of these days we can get hosted as an official podcast on all the Apples and Spotify's. And that would be great because we'll start injecting our marginalized groups activism agenda, which is what I've decided to start calling men's rights, into the mainstream. So let's do it. Now, all right, we're gonna have a good time. Let's check out the chat. All right, Martians. Yep, that's a thing. I'm not going to talk about Martians per se, but there are ways in which science fiction has predicted and failed some predictions, and we'll be discussing why and how all that is with our patrons, actually. So if you are one of the patrons, you will get in on this goodness. I've been wanting to have this discussion for those who've been following about 3 episodes now, and I finally get to have it. And we'll record it and put it up for patrons. So definitely exclusive goodies for patrons, but also attempting to keep all of this edutainment as free as possible. So anyway, let's begin. So the first topic, I suppose, let's talk about, we mentioned Martians. Let's do Hayabusa and the asteroid science and tech goodness. Let's see. Sometimes my camera fails me, but there we go. All right. I've made sure that it stays good. Okay, excellent. So these are the images that you're seeing. Japan's Hayabusa 2 probe makes perfect touchdown on asteroid. And you are seeing the images, the very first ones it took. This handout photograph released by the Institute of Space and Astronautical Science, ISAS, of Japan's Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, that's sure. On July 11th, 2019, shows 4 seconds after the Hayabusa 2 probe landed into the asteroid Ryugu, which I believe means something in Japanese. That I want to say dragon, but I feel like I'm wrong here. So Japan's Hayabusa probe, it essentially had a list of firsts. It landed on this asteroid, made a perfect touchdown, collecting samples from beneath the surface in an unprecedented mission that could, shed light onto the origins of the solar system and just kind of give us a chance to poke around out there in space and be like, what the hell's going on? We've collected a part of the solar system history, project manager Yuichi Tsuda said at a jubilant press conference hours after the successful landing was confirmed. He says, we have gathered subsurface material from a celestial body further away than the moon. We did it, and we succeeded in a world first. So yay, Japan. The fridge-sized probe made its second landing on the asteroid around 10:30 a.m., with officials from the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency breaking into applause and cheers, as initial data suggested the touchdown has been a success. Research director Takashi Kubota told reporters that the touchdown operation was more than perfect. 1,000 points out of 100. I guess they went plus ultra. The probe moved perfectly, and the team's preparation work was perfect, he said. Oh, that's so sweet of him. The brief landing Thursday is the second time Hayabusa 2 has touched down on the desolate asteroid Ryugu, some 300 million kilometers from Earth. That's really far away. Ryugu, which means dragon palace, wasn't that wrong, in Japanese, refers to a castle at the bottom of the ocean in an ancient Japanese tale. The complex multi-year Hayabusa 2 mission has also involved sending rovers and robots down to the surface. So yeah, there's AI here too, of course. We're sending robots out to space. Our children's, our metallic children's, we're sending out there. I guess it's better than doggies, but I don't know. One day, robots will be aware and sentient, and they'll be very upset about us doing this to their cousins. The complex, yeah, that's right. Thursday's touchdown was intended to collect pristine materials from beneath the surface of the asteroid that could provide insights into what the solar system was like at birth some 4.6 billion years ago. To get at those crucial materials in April, they had an impactor that was fired from Hayabusa 2 towards Ryugu in a risky process that created a crater on the asteroid's surface and stirred up material that had previously not been exposed to the atmosphere. Hayabusa's 2 first touchdown was in February when it landed briefly on Ryugu and fired a bullet into the surface to puff up dust for collection before blasting back to its holding position. The second touchdown required special preparations because any problems could mean the probe would lose the precious materials already gathered during its first landing. So this was a risky one. A photo taken of the crater by Hayabusa's 2 camera after the April blast showed the parts of the asteroid's surface are covered with materials that are obviously different, quote unquote, from the rest of the surface. Mission manager Makoto Yoshikawa told reporters before the latest touchdown. Scientists are hoping the probe will have collected unidentified materials believed to be ejecta from the blast after landing briefly in an area some 20 meters away from the crater. It would be safe to say that extremely attractive materials are near the crater. Attractive? Oh, well, what's he talking about there? So this, totally reminds me of might go ahead and talk about that, but there is this gold asteroid. So speaking of attractive materials, we might as well touch on this other asteroid science fiction thing. But so let's finish up real quick with Hayabusa. But the touchdown, the second one, is the last major part of Hayabusa's 2 mission. And when the probe returns to Earth next year to drop off its sample, scientists hope to learn more about the history of the solar system and even the origin of life on Earth, because somehow they're assuming the random asteroid has something to do with origin of the solar system or life on Earth. I'm not really following that personally. If you guys understand why that is, leave some comments down below, but I'm not really sure why they're drawing such large conclusions that some random asteroid will somehow let them know how things were in the beginning of time. That just seems odd. The Hayabusa 2 mission has attained international attention, with Queen guitarist and astrophysicist Brian May sending a video to the probe team ahead of the landing. "This world watching, we love you, take care of Hayabusa 2, the musician told them. That's odd. The Queen guitarist and astrophysicist Brian May. I'm learning a lot today. Hayabusa 2 is the successor to JAHA's first asteroid explorer, Hayabusa, Japanese for Falcon, which returned with dust samples from a smaller potato-shaped asteroid in 2010. It was hailed as a scientific triumph despite various setbacks during its epic 7-year odyssey. The Hayabusa 2 mission was launched in December 2014 with the price tag of around 30 billion yen, which would be $270, yeah, $270 million. So, yeah, I'm not sure why they chose to add that as the last part, but it's not as expensive as I would expect, to be honest, for all the sciencing. But so yeah, there's this other almost meme, I would say. Let's see, let me increase the size of the page briefly. Okay, that's muy bueno. I prefer that much better. Okay, here we go. So yeah, there's this other thing that is like a thing, I guess. Sorry, I got distracted by a ridiculous chat. But there is an asteroid that is made out of special stuff. Look at it, it's so special. Okay, you can't really tell that that's special, but it is. It's very special. It's made out of gold, so it's gonna like make everyone millionaires, right? So there's a variety of articles that are telling people why that's not the case, but there is this asteroid Psyche, Psyche 16. It takes up residence between Mars and Jupiter, and it's carrying around enough heavy materials to net every possible person on the planet close to $1 trillion. The massive quantities of gold, iron, and nickel contained in this asteroid are mind-blowing. Now, the discovery was made. Now is the question of, I guess, proving it. NASA plans to do just that, beginning in 2022. So, veteran miner Scott Moore, CEO of Eurosun Mining, the Titan of Gold, now controls hundreds of the best producing properties around the world, but the 45 million ounces of gold they bring to the market every year pales in comparison to the conquest available in space. So they're talking about 21st century gold rush. Companies, I guess not people, but companies will be going out to space and taking all of this gold down to Earth with them, I suppose. So that should be interesting. But can we really actually extract this space gold? So that's the quintillion-dollar question. Speaking to this publication, Outer Spaces, Professor John Zernecki, president of the Royal Astronomical Society, estimates that it would take 25 years to get proof of concept and 50 years to start a commercial production. So yeah, a long time, really, really long time. But of course, that depends on the key findings, which is the economic feasibility and the advancement of our space technology. So Mitch Hunter-Scullion, founder of UK-based Asteroid mining company, tells the BBC that it is definitely the next industry boom. And I'm assuming they mean specifically available to industry titans, because regular humans obviously can't do this. So, quote, once you set up the infrastructure, then the possibilities are almost infinite, he says. True. There's an astronomical amount of money to be made by those bold enough to rise to the challenge of the asteroid rush. So I wonder if this will in any way boost up a certain kind of AI process, because it would be unfeasible to get humans to mine this gold up there, but robots can do it. I like saying it like the Twilight Zone episodes talk about them. Robots. So Eurosun's Moore agrees. What we're doing on the ground now may be impressive, but like everyone else, even gold exploration in space is only a matter of infrastructure. We'll get to it eventually. But it's not just about the quintillion-dollar prospect of the asteroid belt, which is 750 million kilometers from Earth. Quote, this may be the holy grail of space exploration for gold, but it won't be the first stop on this adventure. There are also near-Earth asteroids which pass close to Earth and can be pushed into an orbit. Fun. From which water and other elements could be extracted. So we're running out of water on Earth, so we're just gonna, I guess, get it from space. Then there's the moon, which holds resources from gold and platinum group metals to helium-3, water, and rare earth metals. Even though mining operations require gravity and the moon is only 1/6 of the Earth, scientists say there is enough gravity to make it work. Woo, let's go mine the moon. Yes, there's already a global market for asteroid mining, and Allied Market Research estimates it will be the top 3.8 billion by 2025. Let's see how good these predictions will last into 2025. They're counting ongoing and future space missions, the rise and inflow of investments in space mining technologies, and the growing use of print materials obtained from asteroids in 3D printing technology. According to Allied, while the spacecraft design segment of this market accounted for 4/5 of the total revenue in 2017 and is expected to continue to dominate through 2025, the big change here will be in the space mining segment or the operations segment. That segment is expected to grow at a CAGR of over 29% by 2025 due to a surge in investment by public and private shareholders in space mining technologies for future exploration. So they're basing a lot of their predictions on people's desire to be a part of this, which, you know, sounds like a fad, which may or may not change depending on what happens. But of course, there's speculation on who will get there first. And this author, Zhao Pie, wrote quite distinctly and at length about the different corporations and who might get there first. There's some deep dive into maybe because it's oilprice.com, but yeah, there's some deep dive into companies and their stock market credentials and who's being a shareholder of what. So that's quite a bit of a detailed situation. So you can read that at your own leisure at patreon.com/AnnaCherry. It's a good time. So let's see. Truly, the next subject is, since we talked about robots so much, let's do this fun topic, which might terrify some of you, but I think it's cool. So we have, StarCraft 2 AI that kicked ass in January is joining a European competitive ladder. So that's a thing that is kind of exciting. It's a computer Zerg thing. But, Zerg obviously is not a very good name for a AI that's smart, because Zerg are super organic. But yeah, it's a thing. AlphaStar. It's an AI that's designed by Google's DeepMind, and it's built specifically to play StarCraft 2. And it's very good at the job. Earlier this year, it delivered an all-around ass-kicking in a couple of StarCraft 2 pros, and it's ready to kick your ass too. Oh well, of course not. This is fantastic. Oh, you guys. So, DeepMind's AlphaStar AI is one of the world's best StarCraft 2 Protoss players. Of course, it's Protoss. Way to go. I suspected as much. Right as we were talking about how it couldn't possibly be Zerg. It's the best thing ever. So, yeah, I will be linking these articles in the patreon.com/AnnaCherry posts. You can click the follow button and then just click on posts and it'll be right there. Or you can go to the CherrySTEM hashtag and you'll get to see all the 30+ episodes and download the audio and get the supplemental discussion. I link all of these things that we talk about in the Patreon posts. So back to AlphaStar. It's an AI designed by Google's DeepMind, and yes, it is quite good, and it was made to play StarCraft 2, and that's it. That's all it does. It's a gamer bot, and it is beautiful. So let's see. As part of an ongoing research into artificial intelligence, AlphaStar will soon begin playing a small number of games on the StarCraft 2 competitive ladder in Europe. The AI will play anonymously, so human players won't know when they're facing it, but they do know they're facing it. And wins and losses against AlphaStar will impact MMR the same way they do against humans. I don't know what MMR is, because I do not play the StarCraft competitively, but I do play StarCraft 1. After it gave me a nosebleed, I'm still playing. So, no, the AI is actually Google. I mean, I don't know if it was made by Koreans in Google, but and it's also not going. You see, it's not going against Koreans. It's going against European players. So Koreans maybe still better than AI. So this quote from Blizzard, having AlphaStar play anonymously helps ensure that it is a controlled test, so that the experimental versions of the agent experience gameplay as close to a normal 1v1 ladder match as possible. It also helps ensure all games are played under the same conditions from match to match. DeepMind will release the research results in a peer-reviewed scientific paper, along with replays of AlphaStar matches, end quote. And that's from Blizzard. Now, multiple experimental variants of AlphaStar will take part in the test. And, oh, you guys, you're on YouTube. Ha! Sorry to just interrupt, but you can totally go watch the StarCraft that I played. They gave me a nosebleed. I'm pretty sure I uploaded it as a video here. And if I can do editing of this stream afterwards, I'll try to throw in a card in here somewhere. But, all right. Multiple experimental variants of AlphaStar will take part in the test, and it will play 1v1 matches only as and against all 3 factions in the game. It will perceive the map using a camera-like view and won't have access to anything happening outside the visible map area. So they are limiting its, showdown capability. It's not like plugged into the system. It's using a quote-unquote camera-like view, whatever that means for DeepMind. It will also have tighter restrictions imposed on its actions per minute and per second than it did in its January matches. So that, I'm assuming, is to combat the advantage that any kind of a robot will have over a human in terms of reaction time. The AlphaStar AI test will be opt-in, so you'll have to click the appropriate button on the in-group pop-up when it appears if you want an ass-kicking. The specific start date for AlphaStar's competitive career and the number of games it will play is not being revealed in order to help reserve its anonymity. Good luck. I suspect you'll need it. And so that's the thing. But, let us talk about AI and other things. But before we do, I just want to point out that recommended videos for you, they're talking about Star Trek. So that's quite accurate of them. And we shall talk about Roddenberry and other sci-fi authors of types that we're fans of later in the show. Now, okay. Let us look into robots. There we are. Okay, there's like a little infographic that I want to show you guys, but it requires me to minimize my little screen. Here we go. All right, perfect timing. Almost. It'll loop, so I'll just talk over it. But we're talking about productivity growth and the high impact of robots or robotics, and people being worried or afraid for their jobs and other things like that. So, or of course, worried about Terminator. That's a thing. But we actually have evidence from, or at least statements from experts who believe that it will take some time to get to this point. So we do see about the same, if not more. Of course, IT looks to be almost double the productivity we had from the steam engine, and automation is quite a boon. But I mean, the steam engine itself also, had it replaced jobs. So like we can look at it in a healthy fashion and be like, well, automation will be here. It will be here slow, but by the time it gets here, we could adapt to it and try to work with it. And of course, we can also look at the where machines could replace humans and where they can't. Okay, let me make sure the entire graph is showing. Good enough, yes. Sure. Yeah, there we go. That works. So here we have where machines. Oh, hello. Thank you. And I believe it is the same. Yeah, McKinsey and Company are the people responsible for creating the data infographic, and they had a article, Harnessing Automation for a Future That Works, which is this article, and it is by McKinsey and Company. So they are responsible for this information. But we can have this little cool like wages and employees. You can focus on regional, global. So the infographic will change based on what area you go to. So this is employees, global, or you can go to Americas or whatever you want. And so in general, it shows you quite a bit of information. And so McKinsey analyzed the impact of automation across 54 countries, recovering 78% of the global labor market to assess the percentage, covering, sorry, not recovering, 54 countries covering 78% of the global labor market to assess the percentage of time spent on activities with the technical potential for automation by adapting currently demonstrated technology. And then they looked at what could be replaced and how long it'll take to get there, and how much it could be automatable. And it looked for, of course, big factors. China, automation potential 51%, India is 52%, United States is up there as well. But worldwide potential, of course, here it is in a variety of a map with percentages and like a little infographic that you can play around with, as well as looking at wage data. So you can focus on a variety of metrics. In this case, a lot of it is automation potential for in terms of how many people are going to stay employed, how many are going to lose their jobs, and it lists a variety of jobs, I suppose you could say, like agriculture, forestry, fishing, manufacturing, finance, and insurance, and look at the automation potential versus how much it depends on actual people and how many people that would make, and just kind of look for yourself as to if you do want to prepare for your job being replaced by robots. You can take a look at this predicted graph and based on their estimations see how in danger your job is. So that's a fun game you can play. um, but yeah, so once again, predictions, and this is not exactly science fiction predictions. This is, I guess, analysts, but to some extent or another, a lot of our science fiction authors were analysts of one type or another. Did you all know that horoscope? Now I can't pronounce it right because of looking up its etymology and origins. But horoscope means time observations. So if anything, I think that should be applied to, instead of actual horoscopes, it should be applied to like things like actual predictions of the future by those who observe the trends and like science fiction authors and or analysts like this McKinsey and Company. So anyway, they are talking about where machines are replacing humans and where they're not yet, and how many people rely on automation and how many trillions that accounts for in wages. But of course, the biggest point is that automation, to the extent that they're outlining, will not happen until 2055 at the very least. Like, there are predictions in terms of how slow we're going, and if you look around, things still very much rely on people, and the robots aren't quite there yet, in terms of like replacing humans. There's still so many jobs that we have to do as people, and there's Boston Dynamics, of course, is working on making their AI and robots seem, well, AI on one hand, that's like Google works on that, but Boston Dynamics works on their robots being I guess warriors, or at least moving like humans one day. I'm not really sure what the point is of making a complete replacement of human in terms of it like moving like a human and otherwise. It's very like making it our own image for some reason. But I mean, I guess everything we live in is adapted to accommodate people who are shaped like us. So it would make sense to make robots who will be able to manipulate all the same things, look and move like us. But yes, it's a whole lot. Seems like a lot. So I don't know. Let me know what you all think about that. But let us move on to the fun stuff, which, I mean, all of this is fun, but to me, science fiction is so much fun. And I'm sure we've talked about this before, so I didn't exactly pull up research this time. But science fiction, reading science fiction in particular, is quite fantastic for growth of one as a person, in terms of like, just interpersonal qualities like empathy and, like, I don't know, a variety of I don't know what is a word to use them, but like ways in which you can get along better with others, and just in general be a person who's more in tune with oneself and others, and at least know what other people are thinking. Like, it doesn't mean it has to influence how you behave, but having in general more empathy and compassion is, to me, a trait of a good human. So I would want to grow towards that as much as possible, while of course also cultivating my reason and evolutionary psychology sort of analytical aspect of, it's like, hey, there are gender differences in the brain, there are other IQ differences based on other things, like there are ways in which we are different, but as long as we cultivate a whole lot of compassion and don't see each other as less, we can actually talk about each other's biological differences and like accommodate for that. And I don't know, it just seems like a good thing to do to me, to cultivate one's compassion and kindness. So science fiction is really good at that, but it actually improves the way the prefrontal cortex and other areas behave and communicate with each other. And I believe it might have something to do with, I guess, living experiences. Like, you're sort of forced to empathize with a character when you read science fiction, because it's a lot of times from their personal perspective, or rather you spend a lot of time with, because reading is like, you spend a lot of time there, and by virtue of what reading is, where it kind of evokes and forces you to evoke imagery as you read, I believe it is very fulfilling just on a mesolimbic dopamine perspective. So reading is a way to meditate while also stimulating, reward in your brain, in my, it's my theory, while also experiencing people, communities. It's like watching TV, the same reason we watch TV, like, or why a lot of people watch like reality TV, and just in general kind of observe other humans, is just something we evolved doing as monkeys. We hung out in groups and we watched each other. That was like the prime mode of entertainment. So I think books are a really good replacement for that, because they allow you to empathize with person's inner feelings. You don't just get to, judge the book by its cover, pun intended, by just like seeing how a person behaves, angry, happy, whatever, and sort of buying into that, which is kind of where we have issues with Facebook and Instagram, where people, in a way, lie to themselves and each other about the kind of lifestyle they have, and that causes provably a lot of anxieties and depression in people. Facebooks and other things are cited a lot of times actually as cause for divorce and in low self-esteem in women and men. Well, mostly women, in particular Instagram. That just ends up being a problem, because we sort of, just like reality TV, we see a projected emotion without really being able to empathize with the deeper emotion, or stopping to think or to ask the deeper emotion. But books allow you, a lot of times, more often than not, they give you an inner monologue or some way to know what the character is feeling. So you end up having this practice of seeing beyond a person's demeanor, and to like actually empathize with their situation. And I think that could be really, really powerful, and could allow us to maintain some critical meritocracy type ideas of evaluating each other based on our performance, while also cultivating enough empathy and kindness to just kind of let each other be and foster the best in each other. So, I'm a big fan of sci-fi, not just for what it provides to people who are, a lot of times maybe not necessarily surrounded by that many friends and can have an outlet in books, to what it does for fostering empathy, but also actually intelligence. There's evidence of reading fiction in particular that helps with a lot of mental cognition. And on top of that, there's been research that found that people remember what they read as fiction more than what they remember reading as fact. So they've done, like your basic research, where they give people a phrase to remember and then they present it as fiction versus fact. And retention rate for something that is fiction specifically is massive. And I believe, if you guys have watched the Netflix Ballad of Buster Scruggs, it had kind of a narrative in it going that people love a story, and that's one the cardinal thing that we all are drawn to is a story. And I believe there's a lot of truth in that. Could be that we pass on information orally for a long time, or who knows, but there's a lot of power there. And for some reason, fiction, as we now of course see things like comic books and Star Wars, Star Trek, a variety of, variety of fantasy and sci-fi that was books is now becoming movies and other ways of media, because we still keep loving and wanting to read those stories. So the interesting thing about science fiction, specifically, not just any kind of fiction, but science fiction, is this almost predictive, like Nostradamus ability of authors, certain ones in particular, to predict a future. Or a lot of times that happens with dystopianism too, where people are saying about our, for instance, robot AI evolution. We keep looking at certain movies and other sci-fi that is on the more frightening side, and we say, oh, it wasn't supposed to be a manual, in terms of George Orwell and like security cameras everywhere and being watched. And like in UK, I hear you can't allow people to walk around with a screwdriver without an explicit, permission from the Queen that you're allowed to have it. It's getting a little dystopian in a way that certain science fiction authors predicted. So it wasn't supposed to be a manual, guys, right? So what is with that? What is with the general ability of science fiction to predict future, or how good is it at it? We have a specific article we're going to discuss with patrons in just a little bit. I believe I still have a whole hour to talk about science fiction. Excellent. Yes, wow, this goes by much slower when it's just me. Damn it. So yes, I will get into it. It's now more on the fiction side of things, as we saw in the title. We have Japanese asteroid probe, we have StarCraft 2 AI, but then we also have power of science fiction. So the second hour is going to be essentially talking about a look into the future, the value of science fiction. And it's actually an article that is another one of those compound articles that you guys may have seen in the Spotlight episode. So if you've perused the Patreon, in a Cherry Patreon post, you might have seen some of the podcasts and other mission podcasts that it linked to, which happens to be one of my favorite publications on Medium. So it'll be one of those, but from there, I will of course be adding our own our own take on it, and you'll be able to reread some of these quotes because I will be reading quotes by a variety of authors. So don't worry if you miss anything; it will be available in the after show. So you'll, or not, sorry, not the after show, the after the post after the show on Patreon. I've been able to get them out within about a week or so of going live on YouTube. So by the time we have the new CherrySTEM episodes, such as today, the last week's episode would have already been posted. And I believe that is currently the case. Last week's episode, you can look at it. And so is the case for a bunch of other previous episodes. So I'm staying on track. You guys are helping me with that. So I appreciate patrons and you viewers so very much with that. And I am keeping an eye on your discussion. Of course, as a patron, if you have a direct question, any kind of challenger or higher tier, your question will be addressed on stream, just another extra bonus. So yeah. All right, awesome. Indeed, the previous episode is already uploaded, so you can look at all of the cherry stems to your heart's content. Now, science fiction is a thing. Oh, what is my cat doing? I don't know. It is all over the place. So yes, this is a much lighter, like, I don't know if I can even call this a STEM episode. I mean, I guess I can because I talked about AI and the asteroids a little bit, but it definitely feels a bit empty with just me. So yeah, I can't wait until we can do these, both of us, again, but it's all good. We do what we can. So I love this quote by Ray Bradbury, which was one of my the science fiction author that I grew up reading. I grew up reading a lot of stuff, but I gravitated towards Bradbury as the science fiction, even somewhat horror author, because Something Wicked This Way Comes gave me the creeps, and then I read all of his short stories, and some of them are downright tragic. So, but it was translated Bradbury. It wasn't in English, so I don't know if the translators added anything of their own that made Bradbury so particularly special to me at a fairly young age. But I don't know. Then I also had fantasy, pretty much just one author who was wow, the Chronicles of Amber guy, whatever his name was. Anyway. Not the point. The quote by Bradbury: "You don't have to burn books to destroy a culture, just get people to stop reading." So true. Going back to the ideas of, the stories that we tell ourselves that are perhaps, our people's stories are our stories. That's how we passed on information about each other and ourselves, is in a story form. And we still do in a way, because a lot of our cultures are passed on with the help of books at the very least. There's of course internet, which also a lot of times is mostly written. Now we have video and stuff, but a lot of times, like, let's talk about religion and things like that. There's always a book. Like, you gotta have your reading, whether it be fiction or otherwise. It's still the power of the story. Now, of course, science fiction specifically, what is the value of that? Sometimes science fiction is the telescope that looks into the future. Through science fiction, literature, and films, we're able to address technological change, existential risks, and cultural crises that we may predict to arise in the future. This form of deep imagination is the ultimate form of preparation, especially since I would add science fiction is based on current and or possible, or at least hoped for, science. So it is the most... Out of all the fiction, science fiction is the most tangible one, in the sense that a lot of times it is riffing off of what already exists. So it is the closest to reality, therefore the most able to address the changes that some of us may already sense, either on a conscious or a subconscious level. So let's see. Whoops, I lost my page. There we go. This form of deep imagination is the ultimate form of preparation. It not only allows us to speculate what the future would look like, it also gives us tools to draw from if these events actually arise. To help prove our point, here are some of the greatest sci-fi minds speak about the value of the genre. So these are quotes. Okay. in that case, I'd like to just throw in a disclaimer because these are quotes by science fictioneers about science fiction, so they're going to be biased because this is how they make their living, and otherwise, this is their bread and butter as what they're known for. So Isaac Asimov. So this is my countryman. Never really read personally much of Asimov, but of course, I, Robot is his seminal work as far as the book's concerned. And the movie, I don't know if it did it justice or not. I haven't read the book, so I wouldn't know, but there was an awful lot of product placement in that movie, so I don't know if iRobot's supposed to be a good representation or not, but we'll see. So, quote, "It is change, continuing change, inevitable change, that is a dominant factor in society today. No sensible decision can be made any longer without taking into account not only the world as it is, but the world as it will be. Science fiction writers foresee the inevitable, and although problems and catastrophes may be inevitable, solutions are not. Individual science fiction stories may seem as trivial as ever to the blinder critics and philosophers of today, but the core of science fiction, its essence, has become crucial to our salvation if we are to be saved at all." Some mighty words there, Isaac. Now there's a quote by Ray Bradbury. Quote, "Science fiction is the most important literature in the history of the world because it's the history of ideas, the history of our civilization birthing itself. Science fiction is central to everything we've ever done, and people who make fun of science fiction writers don't know what they're talking about." Aw, poor guy. I would never make fun of you, Ray. I'd give you hugs with my legs. Quote, another quote. "We need not to be let alone. We need to be really bothered once in a while. How long is it since you were really bothered about something important, about something real?" Well, I mean, it is a bit outdated because a lot of people are bothered all the time now, but... All right, Douglas Adams, quote. I believe Douglas Adams was the quote of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? So, quote, "Let us think the unthinkable. Let us do the undoable. Let us prepare to grapple with the ineffable itself and see if we may not F it after all." That's a fantastic quote. I want that on a shirt. Oh, it's the best. Now there's Philip K. Dick. Quote, "I, for one, bet on science as helping us. I have yet to see how it fundamentally endangers us, even with the H bomb lurking about. Science has given us more lives than it has taken. We must remember that." And also, I believe Philip K. Dick was quite in charge of I don't know why I said it like that. He was an inventor, I suppose, of quite a few things that became actual science. Like, if I recall correctly, Philip K. Dick in particular was like an inventor, like kind of like what's his face? Da Vinci, who was like, an artist, but he also was quite the inventor for things like even the helicopter and others. Now, of course, Blade Runner and Total Recall, if you guys are fans of those, they were, and A Scanner Darkly and Minority Report were all based on novels by Philip K. Dick. So if you guys didn't know that you liked Philip K. Dick, you like Philip K. Dick. So, scanning through his page to try to see about any like actual science I may have been involved in, I noticed flight to Canada and suicide attempt. So that's fucked up. Did it have to do with the breakup? It might have had to do with the breakup. So that's sad, but not all that unusual for men. So So yeah, a lot of movies. For instance, some people are saying even the Terminator series features themes of humanoid assassinations that were first portrayed in the Second Variety, which is a Philip K. Dick thing. Of course, Blade Runner is based on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Now, Total Recall, Screamers, Minority Report, A Scanner Darkly, Blade Runner 2049, as well as also continuing of the same story, and a bunch of others that I don't know if you guys know, so I'm not going to list all of them, but the film adaptations of his are quite large. Now, I can't find anything about the actual technology, but I thought that he had something to do with satellites and other stuff, but I could be completely wrong, so hopefully my chat can correct me on that. So at the very least, you guys are fans of his fiction. So here's a quote, yeah, about the H bomb and all that. That was his quote. Now, Gene Roddenberry, for those who may not be familiar with Gene, he was the essential showrunner for Star Trek, and he was there actually all the way through The Next Generation up until season 6 or so. After season 6, he passed, and other people took over, but he was there for a lot of that. Which, another tidbit, if you guys weren't aware, Lucille Ball is actually responsible for bringing us Star Trek, so she was, I've always loved her, and I love Lucy. she owns her shit, in a way. But anyway, the actual actress was quite a bamf in terms of allowing the Twilight Zone and Star Trek to be things. So go Lucille. Now, quote by Gene Roddenberry. For me, science fiction is a way of thinking, a way of logic that bypasses a lot of nonsense. It allows people to look directly at important subjects. And yeah, exactly. And that way you can use the genre to address current issues and talk about, societal concerns or whatever that you may have in a way that is veiled, but therefore nobody will get offended. But you can still talk about, issues that you currently see. Now, finally, Arthur Clarke. Quote, there's no real objection to escapism in the right places. We all want to escape occasionally. But science fiction is often very far from escapism. In fact, you might say that science fiction is escape into reality. It's a fiction which does concern itself with real issues, the origin of man, our future. In fact, I can't think of any form of literature which is more concerned with real issues, reality. And yeah, and that's essentially was my point, that's one of the ways in which science fiction can be good at prognosticating or predicting the future, is because it is one of the only ones that is basically the closest the fiction that is the closest based into actual reality. So let's see, there is, I believe, a podcast episode if you guys are interested. Let's see, what is it worth sharing with you? I haven't listened to this one, so I would not know. Okay. The Future of Humanity with A.G. Riddle. 99.9% of species that have ever existed on the planet have gone extinct. What makes humans any different? In this interview, Chad sits down with sci-fi author and entrepreneur A.G. Jerry Riddle to discuss the future of humanity. They touch on everything from how media and human interactions will change in the coming millennia to how we can prepare for interactions with interstellar beings. So that's cool. Sure, why not? Let's go with that. You guys are getting it now. So, all right, good, excellent. And that was the last of that I wanted to talk about in terms of science fiction, which of course we have a greater discussion with our patrons about the science fiction and its predictions of future and where it fails, where it doesn't. And I'm not the most biggest dickus. Now, I'm not the biggest expert on science fiction, so I am hoping to learn a little bit as we go along. But I mean, I read my my fair share, but there are certain ones like Philip K. Dick's, for instance, that I never got around to, and a variety of others that I would like to supplement my readings with. I'm currently reading Dune, but also just reading a lot of fantasy. So I have the D&D world of high fantasy, and then the sci-fi world of like cyberpunk and space punk, and there's only so much space in life. But anyway, there's other like little fun things that are science fiction that have become like current. They're not really futuristic anymore that way we thought of them before, but they're like real live current things that happen, such as the Chinese researchers are now claiming to have developed a portable laser rifle. It sounds truly horrific. It does not kill, but it can set fire to clothes and skin from considerable distance. and weighs about the same as most assault rifles. Now, according to international studies scholar Jason Ellis, writing for the Center of New American Security, the U.S. and most other large militaries have been trying to develop laser weapons for decades. The U.S. military has invested vast sums of money in research development of high-energy lasers, HEL, and various other directed energy, DE, weapons. Lasers are already used for guidance and communication, but a laser capable of actually destroying a distant target would require a power output in the multi-megawatt range, and nothing has been developed so far that could do that, let alone do so repeatedly. Okay, so maybe we don't have a laser weapon. Laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. A laser beam is an extremely focused beam of energy, but light tends to spread out or diffract as the distance from its source increases. The rate of diffraction is determined by how narrow the beam is, as well as its wavelength. But maintaining the tight focus over a long distance requires a lot of power, and a lot of power requires a large infrastructure to generate it. So certain lower energy lasers have defensive potential. To destroy a drone, a small boat, or incoming artillery only requires output in the 10 to low 100s of kilowatts. By contrast, a surgical laser produces tens of watts and operates at very short distances. A much more manageable target is a drone or a small boat. So indeed, the Navy successfully tested such a device for defense against a swarm of small boats or drones, a low-tech tactic an adversary might use to destroy a warship. The laser should be cheaper than conventional weapons because guided missiles are very costly, and capable of defending against large numbers of targets since, in theory, it does not require ammunition. As of 2015, no such weapon has been actually deployed, but the proof of concept is there. That iteration of a laser weapon requires a huge device mounted on a ship. The military has also developed other forms of anti-personnel directed energy weapons for crowd control. Ouch. Or to keep enemy soldiers out of particular areas. Additionally, there have been experiments with microwaves and directed electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to disrupt or destroy electronics. The smallest of these is mounted on an enormous truck. Something weighing as little as 7 pounds, as China has claimed to have created, still seems far-fetched to many experts in the field. Wah wah. So this was in 2018, and given that we haven't heard anything since, it's safe to say that it's probably not exactly, the most reliable claim. But yeah, that's a thing that happened. China claimed that. But let's see. So, all right. Papa, I think I ran out of content to talk about. Yes, I did. Awesome. And it's exactly at 1 hour mark. Go me. So yeah, since it's one of us here, it isn't exactly as easy for me to fill a whole 2 hours. So you guys are getting just an hour, but I did want to introduce the new topic, new kind of thing. Once in a while, we'll probably be doing, a variety of repeated segments like we've had with Newsseed and Mindbend, and we'll definitely be having spotlights each quarter because there are certain, I guess, life events kind of follow a set pattern where we have, the same sort of holidays, the same pressures on people through the seasonal affective disorder, the same changes in weather and otherwise in the spring. So there are, topics that we can fairly reliably cover during the spotlight edition. But we did stir up some interesting conversation along the routes of noosphere and knowing oneself, and just in general how the neuroscience of brain activity when we make a decision versus when our cognition decides we made the decision, the interesting ways in which we can be influenced, and in the way that we abstract away from our biology of our brain and think that we're doing a thing, but in reality our brain is doing something else entirely. So all of that was very, very interesting and right along right up my alley in terms of neuroscience and psychology. So we will definitely cover that in a Mindbend episode. And we've been sort of due for a news seed, so today kind of doubled as that. But mostly I want to talk about future and stuff. And I'd like to keep doing that because there's a lot of stuff to do with like quantum computing and in ways that we're trying to change the way our computation, and as you noticed in the infographic of how much society is being helped by technology, IT and information technologies are quite up there, almost a whole percent. So it is something that I think, speaking of predicting the future, it's definitely, computing is something that we're going to continue to rely on. And people are looking at a variety of computing models and options that they're trying to fit with modern views on physics, and they're sort of trying to get ahead there. So there's a lot of interesting stuff on quantum and the future of physics and computation, as well as continued research into IT in terms of like robots, like the AI aspect of it, and not just Google's, but a variety of others. There was the deep learning and the robots like Tay and other ones were just the initial volley. I'm sure there continue to be advancements in that as the more we understand neuroscience. So I definitely want to continue following this development path. Not to mention, we just recently talked about launching of SpaceX because it was, developing news. And now astronomers are not very happy with the fact that there's a bunch of asteroids up there in the sky. A bunch of satellites up there, and it's interfering with their stargazing. But yes, asteroids, that's a thing. There's one that's supposed to hit us in September or something. So there's a lot of developing situations that having to do with the near future that are along our favorite lines of biology, technology, and space. So I will be continuing this sort of future-esque trend at some points. But let us know in the comments what kinds of news seeds, what topics, or what research fields or umbrellas you all would like us to look into beyond our usual space tech and I guess biology. So let us know if there's any specific subsections that you all want us to talk about, as we definitely don't mind gathering news in that specific sphere. So yeah, we continue existing because of you guys giving us those view hours and minutes of listen time. That's very useful because when Susan took over YouTube, all of our monetization left. Not that I was monetizing most of the things anyway, but a lot of our ability to monetize left because it reset everything. So I do appreciate the view hours. The show would not be possible without our patrons and without you viewers, because currently, we are doing this just because we want to and we enjoy it, and Patreon gives us a little bit to be able to supplement taking out Mondays to do this. But yeah, I can't wait to be able to grow this podcast into an actual one and throw it up on Spotify and other places. So if you can support us without hardship, I would highly recommend checking out patreon.com/AnnaCherry. And we do have a new pledge, as you can see. We have a brand new patron that happened to join during this show, so we shall be doing a after show with our patron, new and old, in Discord, and there will be a link and things like that posted in the official Patreon. So if you're patrons, you'll get all the appropriate emails. Definitely keep your notifications on and join us in Discord, where I post all the updates all the time. I practically live on Discord. But anyway, thank you all very much, and we will see you patrons in just a little bit. And as always, on Patreon will be all of the audio that you may need. You can download it. You can get the RSS link in the description down below. And I will see you all next Monday. Thank you for joining.